All right. Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias todos. I think we're ready to get started, so let's go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of information that we're going to present to you today. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions. There's a lot of concerns, so we want to go ahead and get started as soon as we can. Before we do get started, I want to give you some introductions and some welcomes very quickly. My name is Manuel Velez. I am the chair of the Chicano Studies Department here at San Diego Mesa College. And again, I welcome all of you. It's good to see all of you here. The event that we're having here very quickly is an information session. I'm sure that there are a lot of questions. The November election certainly made a lot of us concerned. The fact that immigration seemed to be such a very important issue during these elections and a very divisive issue has certainly left a lot of us who are either immigrants ourselves or who are supporters of the immigrant community have left us with a lot of concerns, a lot of questions, and certainly with a lot of fears. So the idea behind this event is really to try to give ourselves a little bit of information so that we are less concerned, less afraid, so that we do have a better understanding of what's ahead of us and how we can deal with whatever comes up ahead of us as well. So along that line, what we did is that we've invited members from the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium as well as Alliance San Diego to come on the campus and to speak to us about DACA, about alternatives to DACA, about what we can expect coming up in the next several years or so on in reference to DACA, and certainly what we can do as students, as faculty, as administrators to support undocumented students, as well as to give all of our students a sense of comfort and a sense of ease. This has been a collaborative effort. Even though we here at Chicano Studies have certainly worked to organize this event, this is an event that has been very much supported by the entire campus community. The counseling department has done a wonderful job of being involved in this event as well. Anabel Pulido has done an excellent job in helping to promote the event as well. Our president, Pamela Lester, has shown a lot of support for this event. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. She's feeling a little bit ill, but we certainly have members of our administration, such as Vice President of Instruction Tim Graff, who's here to welcome us as well as Vice President of Student Services, and I don't see her at this point, Ashanti. There you go, Ashanti, who's also here as well. In fact, I want to ask Ashanti to come up and give a very brief welcome if possible. Ashanti?
Hello, my name is Ashanti Hands. I'm Vice President of Student Services here at Mesa College. And again, as was mentioned, President Lester really wanted to be here today to show her support, to make sure that you all are aware that our administration takes every opportunity to reaffirm our values and commitment to educating all of our community, and to make sure that we are able to provide you all with resources, support, access to information to make informed decisions, and to make sure that you know that your education is valued here and that you have support for moving forward and pursuing your dreams, your goals, and being successful students and members of our community. So on behalf of President Lester and the campus as a whole, I really want to thank you all for being here. I often share that a part of my mission, my purpose, is to help create the conditions that matter for our students to succeed. So whenever I can be a part of those conditions and be a part of that environment and that community where we come together, where we support, where we educate, inspire, motivate, I always want to take advantage of those opportunities. So I thank you so much for being here. I encourage you all to ask questions. I encourage you all to make sure that you have access to that resource and the information, and to continue the dialogue beyond this event, and to make sure that you have the support that you need and that you are able to be a support and resource to others. So this is all of our collective work, and so we are going to do this together. And I'm glad that we're doing it in partnership with community members, that we have faculty, staff, administrators, students here, because again, I really think this shows the strength of what we can accomplish and how it is that we can support and what it is that we stand for. So thank you so much for allowing me to share a few moments, and thank you for coordinating this event. Welcome.
Thank you, Ashanti. And again, thank you for all of the administrators, the faculty, the staff, and everybody who has come together to support this event and to support our students. So without further ado, again, there's a lot of information that we want to provide for you. So I'm going to ask Itzel Guillen, who's from Alliance San Diego, to come up to the stage. She's going to take over. She's going to start the presentation, introduce us to the important people, and give us a lot of important information. So everybody, please welcome Itzel Guillen.
Sorry, I have to lower it because I'm shorter. Well, thank you all for coming here. Good morning, and thank you to Mesa College for hosting us. We are so glad that we have been given this opportunity to talk to you as students, as faculty members, as staff, so that you could spread this information through your networks, to your family members, to your friends, because it's very vital that we spread this information now. So today, I am here representing Alliance San Diego. We are part of Ready Now San Diego and the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium that we have been going out to the community and offering these informational forums to make sure that our community has the resources that they need at this time. And we are counting on the commitment of the Mexican Consulate as well. And I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm going to introduce our Consul, Victor Corso, who will be giving us a little bit of information about how the Mexican Consulate can provide support and resources to the Mexican community at this time. So without further ado, I'll introduce Victor Corso, and then I'll be back and introduce our immigration attorney that is here today. Thank you.
Buenos días. As itself said, my name is Victor Corso. I'm the consul in charge of the Legal Affairs and Consular Assistance Department at the Mexican Consulate here in San Diego. We are very thankful for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you guys. I'm going to talk to you about, explain to you what are the steps that the Mexican government are taking in order to protect Mexican nationals that may feel threatened by the new policies that may be implemented in the U.S. Related to immigration issues. As you know, the Mexican Consulate is a diplomatic representation that is based in several states in the United States as allowed under international law. We are operating under international law, and according to the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, that is our framework where we operate. We have already installated, or we have 50 Mexican consulates throughout all the United States territory. That makes us the largest consular network of any other country around the world in one specific country. The reason why we have so many consulates in the U.S. is because of the large community, Mexican community that we have here. So in order to take all the steps to protect them, that's the main function of any consulate, to protect the interests and the rights of its nationals abroad. The government of Mexico has already adopted several steps in order to ensure that the rights of the Mexican nationals are respected in any event. So taking into consideration the language that has been used during the elections, the presidential elections here in the U.S., the government of Mexico, we have already implemented some steps, 11 steps that I'm going to explain to you. The first one, besides the human resources that we have at the Mexican Consulate, that we have a legal department that protects all the interests of Mexican nationals, and we have a network of attorneys. We have produced some alliance with NGOs, local NGOs that are protecting the rights of migrants and civil rights. So we ensure that nobody's rights get violated. We have developed an app for iPhone or Android that is called Mi Consulmex, MICONSULMEX, where with this app, you can access all the emergency phone lines from the Mexican government in the U.S. As well, you have all our email addresses and any other information that you may need, or migrants may need. Since we don't know what is going to happen, what our main focus right now is to spread official versions of the information that we are having, or the U.S. government is releasing. We are living on an era where false news are spreading on a upsetting or maybe worrying amount. We have seen that on Facebook, where during the election period were published several false information. That's the reason why we're trying to inform the Mexican community about what is really happening. Why? Because we're going to see a lot of frauds committing during the crisis periods several persons are going to try to defraud, take people's money, or try to increase fear. No? Especially taking advantage of the cultural differences between our country, Latin American countries, and the US. For example, notarios. The notarios, the institution of the notario público in Latin America, it is synonym of a well-known attorney that has like a lot of experience, and it passes like several exams to become a public notary. Here in the US, it is completely different. So anyone can be a notary. Even in the gas stations, you can find public notaries. So the public notaries taking advantage of that cultural difference. They are like providing legal advice to migrants, and they falsely believe that they're going to help them. And usually it turns out that they are defrauding them, and probably they're going to destroy any chances that they can adjust their legal status. As well, not any attorney can like do immigration law. That's the reason why Alliance San Diego has organized this type of events. So in order to inform which attorneys are the ones that are going to be experts on immigration issues. So because during this period of time, attorneys in general, they're trying to seek more clients. So even though they're not going to do anything for a specific client, because if they don't know how to do, or if a migrant doesn't have a legal basis to adjust their status, there's basically nothing that can be done on behalf of that migrants. So in order to avoid getting defraud, that's the reason why we are spreading the word about which attorneys we have to trust. No? So besides working with NGOs, we have already established a call center, the Mexican government, where Mexican nationals call 24/7, and we can provide legal information, so we can refer them where they need to go and to let them know that they are not alone. So in case that any one of you or any of your family members or friends is in a situation where they need some specific information on what steps they have to take in order to be prepared for anything that may happen, please tell them that the Mexican consulate and all the 50 consulates throughout the U.S. are there for them, and they are not alone. Thank you very much.
I want to give thanks to the Mexican Consulate for coming out here and showing their support. And without taking too much time again, I'm going to introduce our immigration attorney, Maria Chavez. She comes from Jacobs and Schlesinger, who has partnered with us numerous times through the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, and she has been a great advocate for immigrant rights. So without further ado, I'll introduce Maria Chavez, and she will be handling the presentation, the immigration presentation. Thank you.
Alrighty, so thanks everybody for being here today. Like Itzel said, I am an immigration attorney. I only practice immigration law. Many years ago, I practiced other areas of law, but right now my focus is solely on immigration law. And so that's when, as Mr. Corso was talking, that's one of the really important things that you want to focus on when you're searching for an immigration attorney, making sure that they specialize in immigration. Immigration is an extremely complicated area of law. It is the second most complicated area of law behind tax law. So our books are literally thousands and thousands of pages long, and so it takes a lot of work and a lot of research. So just keep that in mind as, you know, in the future as you're looking for immigration attorneys. All right, so the things that I'm going to talk about today, pretty much, you know, the number one question on everybody's mind, the 2016 election, and what does this mean for DACA, for, you know, people who don't qualify for DACA, for everything else. So we're going to talk on that. We're going to talk about just general immigration relief options, knowing your rights. We are still a country of laws. We still have a constitution. Everybody has rights. Avoiding fraud, we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. And then also mobilizing, things that you can do to prepare, and then followed by questions and answers at the end. If you have any questions that pop up as I'm presenting, I have no problem answering them, but please, please, please make sure they are general questions. I don't want anybody's business out there. We don't know everybody in the room. So if you've got a general question, that's fine. If you want to ask me something specifically about you and your situation or a family member situation, we can talk afterwards privately, okay? the president-elect and his promises. We all heard the ugly rhetoric over the course of the campaign. He has promised that he's going to end DACA when he takes the White House. But keep in mind that he's not going to be president until January 20th. That's Inauguration Day. So until then, DACA remains in place. If you have DACA, you continue to be protected. He has promised to take away DACA on January 20th, but whether or not he actually does that, we don't know. I'm sure if, since Election Day you've seen the news, he's flip-flopped and gone back on a lot of the promises that he's already started to make. So we don't know ultimately what he's going to end up deciding to do. So if you've got applications pending, they will remain pending. If you've got DACA already, you're fine. If you have not yet applied for DACA, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So like I said, for the moment, there is nothing confirmed. We don't know what's going to happen. So the risk, what risk is there if you have DACA right now? We don't know, but as of right now, we don't believe that people with DACA will be targets for deportation. In the past, administrations have not used programs like DACA or other deferred action programs as a base for a deportation program. Honestly, it's just contrary to public policy. Can you just imagine the public outcry? These are young, hardworking individuals in our country who are contributing, and then all of a sudden you're targeting them. You promise them this benefit, give them the benefit, and then you yank it out from under their feet and try to deport them. I just imagine, the protests and the riots that would come as a result of that. So I don't think it's going to happen. But like I said, with the president-elect, we have no idea what's going to happen. Initial applicants. If you think you qualify for the initial DACA program and you have not yet applied, or you know somebody who has not yet applied, the process does take several months to get a decision. It takes about 6 months. So if you've not yet requested it, it's very, very unlikely that you will get approved before January 20th. And so whenever the case does get decided, it's possible that by that point the program doesn't even exist anymore. So at this point, if you have not yet applied for DACA, we recommend that you hold off until we figure out what's going to happen. Number one, because you're going to be paying $465. The fees are going to go up at the end of December, and you may not get a decision. But worst of all is that you're pretty much raising your hand and saying, "Hi, immigration, I'm here." And if they don't already know that you're here, there's no reason to expose yourself to them if you haven't already done so. If you've got an initial DACA application pending, just let it run its course and see what happens at this point. So the future with renewals, if you already have DACA, if you are due for renewal, if you have recently renewed, you should be okay. Like we said, we don't know what's going to happen. When he says he's going to end DACA, we don't know what that means. Does that mean that he's going to terminate everybody with an employment authorization document based on DACA? Or does that simply mean that he's just going to let DACA recipients not renew? We don't know. So if you already have DACA, like I said, you're already known by the government. There's no additional risk. They already know that you're here. They've already given you documents in the past. So you're going to be fine. There's no additional risk, I should say. But if you are eligible to renew, USCIS accepts applications 180 days before expiration date. If you are eligible to renew, we recommend that you renew it sooner rather than later. Because if say, for example, if the president-elect allows you to keep your employment authorization until its expiration date, that's at least another 2 full years with valid work authorization, valid driver's license, a valid social security number. Whereas if you don't renew, then you're going to possibly miss out on that opportunity. But again, if the president does say, or if the president-elect does say, we're going to stop all employment authorization documents, and you get the renewal, the only thing that you're out of is the $465. But at least you don't have that lingering question, well, what if I had applied? Also, right now, DACA renewals are moving really, really quickly. I've had one client get theirs approved with less than a month. So on average, it's about 8 weeks, but some have been getting approved for less than a month. So there is a strong chance that you will get a decision on your DACA renewal before Inauguration Day. Okay, so just keep that in mind. DACA advanced parole. One thing that we're going to talk about in a little bit is adjustment of status. And so advanced parole is a document, it's a travel document that is given to individuals who have DACA. It's usually given for reasons, education, work, or humanitarian reasons. And a lot of people have been using that to travel for any of those reasons, and then they come back, they then have a lawful entry, and they're able to adjust status through a U.S. citizen spouse. And we'll get into the details of that in a little bit. But if you do not have a advanced parole document yet, it may be a little hard for you to get it approved and then out and back in before Inauguration Day. Right now it's taking about 3 months for those applications to get approved, so that would put you at about February 2017. And as unpredictable as the president-elect is, we don't know when or if a decision is going to be coming down, and so it's extremely risky for you to apply for advanced parole and then leave the country after January 20th, because then even if you have the advanced parole document, they may not let you back into the country. So the exception for that is if there is an actual bona fide emergency that requires your urgent travel outside of the country. You can submit the application, schedule an appointment with the local immigration office in downtown, and they may be able to give you a decision right then and there. And so when I say an actual bona fide emergency, I mean, like, for example, your grandmother just died and the funeral is tomorrow, or your father just slipped into a coma and the doctors say that he's not going to make it and you really need to get down there to say your goodbyes. I mean, actual real emergencies like that. You have to have the documentation to show it, to prove that this is a real emergency, and then you can get it approved usually on the spot at the immigration office. Then you leave and then come back, and as long as you're back in before January 20th, then you've got your lawful entry. Okay? All right, so future comprehensive immigration reform. We all know that our immigration system is extremely outdated. It is a patchwork of laws. Nothing makes sense. We need immigration reform. I think that's just a given. But based on the campaign rhetoric and all of the ugly things that have been said, we don't expect any sort of immigration reform to happen within the next 4 years, unfortunately. We don't expect expanded DACA or DAPA to make it through the courts. In fact, once President Obama leaves office, it's very likely that the president-elect is going to have the Department of Justice withdraw the complaint or withdraw the appeal from the courts, and then that will be the end of expanded DACA and DAPA, unfortunately. It is possible that some states will try to introduce additional state legislation that create benefits and protections for immigrants like California does. I mean, we're lucky that we live here in California. But the opposite of that is that there are states that may introduce legislation that increase immigration enforcement, like Arizona, for example. So just keep that in mind. I'm happy that we live in California and that everybody, the government here is, for the most part, pretty progressive when it comes to immigrant rights. Okay, knowing your rights, like I said, despite all of the ugly campaign promises, all of the, mass deportations that have been promised, etc., we are still a country of rights. We are a country of laws. We have a constitution. Every single one of you, whether you're documented or not, has rights, and those rights cannot be violated, okay? So it's extremely important that you know your rights. First, if immigration, police, or FBI agents attempt to enter your house, do not open the door, okay? If they say they have a warrant, you need to see that warrant. You need to inspect that warrant and double check it. Make sure it is for your address. It is signed by a judge, and that it gives your address and something specific. It can't just be a general warrant, search for any and all contraband. That's not allowed. That's actually against the law. It needs to be for something specific. We're searching for Jose Diaz at 1234 Main Street. We're searching for 5 stolen Dell laptops at 1234 Main Street. It has to have something very specific on there in order for them to come in and search. You want to look at, like I said, at the warrant. Make sure that it says warrant, has your address, and if it does not have any of that information, do not let the officers into your home. Don't even put the little door jamb and just, open it a little bit. No, just keep it closed and talk to them through the door. You do not need to open the door. If the officers enter anyway, don't try to stop them. The last thing we need is to have another police brutality situation on our hands. Just, strictly, tell them you do not have the right to enter. You do not have the right to enter. Try to get their names and badge numbers, and then we can file a complaint later and deal with it later. Okay? So this is some examples of what search warrants in San Diego look like. So this is just the first page, and the relevant information is redacted on here. But just so you have an idea, this is what it looks like. As you can see, there's writing on it. It's clear that it's gone through a judge. Somebody has seen this and approved it. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you're looking at the different search warrants, if that should ever happen. So if the officers do have a warrant, they may enter your home, but they can only search for the people or items listed on the warrant. Like I said, you want to inspect the warrant before they come in, verify the information. They can only look in areas that are reasonably expected to find what they're looking for. So for example, if the search warrant says, we need to find a 7-foot Christmas tree, there's no reason for them to open every single drawer in your dresser. This isn't Harry Potter. You're not going to be able to hide a 7-foot Christmas tree in your dresser, right? If you are detained or a loved one is detained, remind them that they have the right to remain silent. You don't have to speak to the officer. You don't have to answer their questions. You can be quiet or just tell them, I wish to speak to my attorney. I wish to remain silent, and that's the end of that. They're going to talk about you. They're going to, say all of this stuff in front of you to try to coerce you into talking. Just maintain your ground. Stay your ground. Don't say anything. Keep your mouth shut. Just listen, okay? You don't have to answer any questions or present any documents. You have the right to remain silent. Do not sign anything you do not understand. Even if you read English perfectly, there's all sorts of funny legal words that you may think mean one thing, but they don't really. Like expedited removal. If you see something like that and you say, okay, well, that's probably just like a salida voluntaria, it should be fine, right? No, an expedited removal is actually another word for deportation. So if you don't understand the word, don't sign the document, okay? Have an attorney review it. They will, like I said, they will try to coerce you and make you scared and all sorts of things. Don't listen to them. You have rights, just maintain your ground. Don't lie to officers. This is number one and super duper important. Don't present false documents or lie, because this will only make your situation worse. Don't ever, if you are not a U.S. citizen, do not ever say, I am a U.S. citizen, because the minute you utter those words, you are permanently ineligible from getting any sort of immigration benefit in the United States. So if you are not a U.S. citizen, do not make a false claim to citizenship, okay? So again, if you are arrested, just remember, you have the right to remain silent, not answer any questions. You have the right to speak with your attorney or your consulate, and do not sign any documents you do not understand. So what can immigrants do now? It's important to understand legal immigration benefits. You should consult with an immigration attorney or BIA accredited representatives to consider your legal options to find out if you qualify for other immigration benefits. ReadyNowSanDiego.org, jot that down, take a picture of this slide, memorize this website, because we have a list of reputable immigration attorneys. They have been vetted. We know that they will not steal your money. We know that they will competently represent you, and we know that they will do good legal work. They will be honest with you. They're not just gonna, try a million different things and see what sticks. They're actually gonna be honest with you and tell you what your options are. That's not to say that we're not gonna get creative, because sometimes we have to get creative, but we're not gonna make you apply for something that you clearly don't qualify for. We're not gonna make you lie. And so these attorneys have been vetted. We know that they're good. There's a ton of immigration attorneys, and I'm sure you guys have heard horror stories about some of the things that immigration attorneys have done. And unfortunately, they do exist, but you can go through this website, go through different nonprofit agencies that are in San Diego, and you'll be able to find good immigration attorneys that way. All right, so we're just going to briefly discuss some other options of immigration relief. If you think that any of these may apply to you or your situation, we can talk for a few minutes afterwards, but you're definitely going to want to have a more in-depth consultation with an attorney to go through all the nitty-gritty details and see exactly what you qualify, because I'm going to go through it right now and make it sound really easy, but it's not. There's actually a lot of different nuances that have to be addressed in a consultation. So the first visa, or the first thing, is the U visa. This is my personal favorite visa, just because it is so forgiving. It can forgive prior deportations. It can forgive criminal criminal convictions. It can even forgive a false claim to citizenship. Keep in mind, this is the only thing that can forgive a false claim to citizenship. So it's, for oftentimes a lot of people, the last chance, their last option at getting any sort of legal status in the United States. And the beauty of this is even if they've been deported, they can still process this visa from outside of the United States. I've got 3 clients right now in Mexico who are waiting to get their U visas so they come back into the United States. So the first, you have to have been the victim of a violent criminal act. Usually violent criminal acts are the main ones. So for example, domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, felonious assault, like an assault with a weapon or something along those lines, but also other kinds of crimes, blackmail, human trafficking, slavery, extortion. If any of those situations have applied to you in the past, to consult with an attorney, okay? Pretty much consult with an attorney. You have to have actually reported the crime to the police and cooperated with the police or the district attorney's office in the investigation of the crime. Because step 1 of the U visa is to prove your cooperation. We have to get the police department or the DA's office to sign off on a certification saying that you did indeed cooperate with the crime, okay? As a result of the crime, you have to have suffered significant physical or mental abuse. So if you went to the hospital, if your teeth were knocked out, if you have pictures of the bruises that you suffered, or even if there was no physical trauma but it was all mental trauma, if you had to go see a therapist, if you suffered from weeks and weeks of insomnia and nightmares and stress and depression and PTSD, we can get all of that documented, okay? And so you would use that to prove this element of significant physical or mental abuse. Like I said, you cooperated with the police, and then the crime occurred in the U.S. or violated U.S. law. Earlier this year, California, being the great state that it is, passed a law and made U visas just a little bit more easy for the certifying agencies to grant here in California. I'll give you an example. For the longest time, one of the local police departments would not sign a certification if the crime happened more than a year ago. Well, that's not fair. So you mean to tell me that if my child was murdered 5 years ago, but I didn't know about this immigration benefit, I cooperated, I testified, the person's in jail, I can't get this, you won't sign it for me? That wasn't fair. So somebody, I think it was Loretta Sanchez or Gonzalez, one of them, she proposed this law and it signed the law. So now there is a presumption that you cooperated, and it eliminates the statute of limitations that different police departments were doing. One police department even told me, I don't have to sign it, so I'm not going to sign it. That's not really fair either. So now they have to sign it, and they have to sign it within 90 days or 14 days if you were detained in immigration jail. So it's a little bit easier to get now. Now, once you get the certification signed, you have 6 months to get everything submitted to immigration. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of evidence that goes in with it. You have to prove that you're the good person, that you deserve all this. So, if you've got any of those certificates and stuff from when you were a kid, and any, Dean's List stuff that you're getting now, make sure that you save that so that if you qualify for this, you can include that as part of your good moral character evidence. The only downfall of the U visa is that as it's becoming more and more known, it is taking a really, really long time to get it granted by USCIS. So I've got clients right now they're processing cases that were filed in June 2014, but that's not even to get a visa. That's to get put on a wait list to get a visa, because there's only 10,000 visas a year. And so the number of people that are on the wait list to actually get one of the 10,000 visas is 70,000. So if you think that's 7 years, so the time spent to get on the wait list, your time on the wait list, and then your time with the visa. So it is a long time, but in the meantime, you're protected because you have this U visa filed. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. All right, so for victims of domestic violence, VAWA stands for the Violence Against Women's Act, but it doesn't just apply to women, it applies to men too. So you have to be an abused husband, wife, or child of a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. You have to actually be married, or be married to, or be the child of a citizen or permanent resident of the U.S. You have to live in the United States. There is an exception for military families. You have to have lived with your abuser in the United States. Again, there is an exception for military families. You have to have suffered Physical, mental, or emotional abuse to the point of causing extreme mental harm. So that's super legal and super technical, but pretty much, if you just suffered physical abuse, if you suffered mental abuse, let the attorney work on making the argument, okay? If you suffered any sort of abuse, get it documented and go and talk to an attorney. We have different things that we can do to try to help you document that. Examples of abuse: financial abuse. If your spouse would only give you $5 a week and say you need to figure out how to live on this for the week, that's an evidence of financial abuse. If you are married to a U.S. citizen and you are undocumented and your spouse promised to file immigration papers for you but always made up an excuse why, oh, you didn't clean the house right, or oh, you don't cook dinner good, or whatever, that's a form of abuse, okay? So just keep that in mind if you're trying to explore this option. Super important, you have to have married your spouse for love. You couldn't have married them to try to get immigration papers. So yeah, it actually has to be a bona fide, a real marriage. You have to have good moral character. So if you've got certain criminal history, it's possible that it can be waived. But for the most part, you have to be a good person. You have to show that you deserve to have this granted. And you have to demonstrate that either you or your children will suffer tremendously if you leave the country. Okay, special immigrant juvenile status. In California, another one of the great changes that came earlier this year is that this was extended from 18 years old to 21 years old. So SIGIS is how it's called. We call it in the immigration world. It's sort of a two parts of a case. The first part is that you have to demonstrate to a family court or a dependency court in California that you have either been abused, abandoned, or neglected by your parents. Okay, so if you think back to a few years ago, the thousands of children that were coming from Central America, the unaccompanied children, a lot of them are applying for SIGIS because they're fleeing because they've been abused, abandoned, or neglected by their parents. So you come in, you present yourself to the family court. The family court judge says, yes, this person has been abused, abandoned, or neglected, and it is not in the person's best interest to return to their home country. Order granted. So you get this order, then you take this order along with a bunch of other paperwork and submit it to immigration. If you are from Central America, so Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador, there is a wait list in order for you to get your actual green card. But if you're from Mexico, I don't believe there's a wait list right now. I think it was cleared up earlier this summer, or at the end of the summer. So if you look at the bottom, the last two bullets, the reunification of the child has to be that one or a reunification with one or both parents is not possible. And that is not in the best interest of the juvenile to return to their country of origin. So just keep in mind that guardianship order now applies to children or young adults up to 21 years old. So if you've aged out and you're like, oh, you know what, this happened to me, talk to an immigration attorney, see if that's something that can happen for you. Okay. All right, so adjustment of status. This is probably the most common way that people look to get their green card. And as I mentioned to you guys earlier with the advanced parole and everything, the main way to qualify for adjustment of status is that you entered the country lawfully. You entered the country with some sort of document. So for my undocumented clients that I see right now, the main way that this happens is that they came in with a tourist visa and they overstayed, or they came in with a border crossing card and they overstayed. They just never left. And so they have proof of that. They have proof of their lawful entry, and then if they're married to a U.S. citizen, they can apply for a green card immediately without having to wait on a wait list. Okay, so the top part is the people that there's no waiting list, so you can file both your family petition and your application for your green card all at once. Now, there are exceptions to this, and this is where it's important that you talk to an attorney. If you've entered and left multiple times, depending on how many times you entered and left, depending on the dates that you entered and left, there have been different changes in the law throughout the years, so there can be exceptions that may make you not qualify for this. If you've got certain criminal convictions, if you've got certain felonies, or even certain misdemeanors, you may not qualify for this without some sort of a waiver. So just something to keep in mind. If you think this applies for you, get all of your documents ready to collect it and talk to an immigration attorney to go through all the nuanced details. So like I said, the main one is they entered with with a visa or other legal documentation. Another option is if you or your parents had ever had a petition filed before April 30th, 2001, you may be eligible for an exception. So even if you entered without documentation, say you entered, in 1989 or 1990 and your parents brought you through the desert or through the beach or hidden in a car, but say they have a sister who was a U.S. citizen in the 90s, filed for them before April 30th, you can be included in that petition and be eligible for adjustment of status. You have to pay a $1,000 fine, but I'd rather pay a $1,000 fine than have to go to the consulate and fight my case there, right? So if you entered without documents or do not have an old petition from before April 30th, in most cases, unfortunately, it's going to be impossible to apply for your green card from within the United States. There are very, very small minor exceptions, which is why you need to talk to an attorney to see if that's a possibility, okay? You need to be able to pass a criminal background check. Like I said, there are possibilities for certain waivers, but that's going to get super complicated. I'm not going to get into all of that right now, so consult with an immigration attorney about that. And then if you entered, or if you have an old request 245I, you can only have entered the country one time after March 1997. So again, if you've got multiple entries, depending on the dates and when you entered and how you entered and all that, it can get really complicated as to whether or not you'd be able to qualify. So talk to an immigration attorney just to review all the facts in your case. Now just a real quick, so which family members qualify the no waiting list? So I'm sure people have heard about, there's a 20-year wait list for, my uncle to get papers through my dad coming through. There's, talk to an attorney. There may be certain ways for you to be able to avoid going out, especially if you had DACA before you turned 18. There's different rules apply. You may fall under the wait list, but depending on when the wait list happened or where they're on the wait list and when your paperwork was filed, we may be able to get you out to the consulate and you still be okay and get back in within a week or two and not have to wait for months and years outside of the country. So again, it can be really complicated. Talk to an attorney. Another super important thing, preparing an emergency plan. This is not just for immigrants. Honestly, as I was reviewing the PowerPoint earlier today, I'm like, I should probably do this for myself and my family. So, the most important thing, you're going to want to gather all of your important documents, your birth certificate, your passports, important contacts and resources. Keep that all in one safe place. I have a binder that my husband and my son both know where to find, and that's got all of our passports, all of our birth certificates, all of our shot records, those types of super important documents that you really need to keep on you at all times. You want to have community resources ready to access in case of an immigration-related emergency. So if you or a family member gets detained, what's going to happen? Who's going to pick up the kids? Who's going to pick up your paycheck? Who's going to, how are you going to get keys into the apartment to be able to get their belongings out? So those are the types of things that you want to keep in mind and start to prepare. You're going to want to prepare a power of attorney. Immigration attorneys sometimes do or don't prepare these. It's going to depend on the attorney, but any attorney for the most part can pretty much prepare a power of attorney. And so, for example, this is so that your spouse can sell your car if their name is not on the title. Who's going to be able to pick up the kids from school if you're detained one day, like that type of thing. It can also help you prepare for long-term separation. So if you are going to be forced to wait outside of the United States, or you or your family member is going to be forced to wait outside while your immigration case resolves itself, who's going to take care of your U.S. citizen children while you're in here? Are you going to take them with you? Are you going to leave them here? Are they going to be entrusted to somebody? So there's the kinds of things that an emergency plan is going to help prepare for you. Now, Form G28 is something that you can find online. This is a form that allows an attorney to represent you. So if you are detained, sometimes it's really hard for us to come see you. So say, for example, you got arrested here in San Diego, but you're transferred to Adelanto. It's going to be really hard for a San Diego attorney to go up to Adelanto to see you to get all of the necessary documents signed. But if you have a Form G28 signed ahead of time, designating an immigration attorney, we can do a lot of work that way, a lot more faster than having to try to track you down and going up there to see you or wherever to see you. What if you're clear across the country? If you have it signed before as part of your emergency plan, then things will go a little bit more smoothly for the attorney trying to help you. So, something to consider if you say you're a single mother, you don't really have much support, but yet you have a neighbor who every so often will help you check in on your kids or something. You may want to write down what the family schedule is for that person or whoever your support system is. So that includes your time of arrival and departure from work, school, any other kinds of common schedules. So that way they can know if you don't show up one day, what's going on, what's happening. They can try to track you down because they know more or less what your schedule is. And, like I said, just keep this in view of family, friends, any other support system that you may have. Have a family reunion with your partner and children to explain what the real risks are of removal of deportation. Review the plan together and make sure each family member knows what to do in case of an emergency. It's scary to think about, but it really is something. I mean, as kids, we all practice fire drills and earthquake drills, and so this is the same type of thing that you're going to want to review with your family just to say, hey, in case something happens, we really need to think about this and prepare. Okay, so avoiding fraud, as Mr. Corso talked about earlier, notary publics, notarios, they're not immigration attorneys. They don't have any sort of license, any sort of authority to practice immigration law. So it's really important to steer clear of them. If somebody advertises as doing taxes and immigration, or travel agency in immigration, or I'll fix your vacuum in immigration, anything other than being an immigration attorney, then chances are they don't know what they're doing and they may mess up your case. And people say, oh, well, immigration attorneys are so expensive, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they are, I get it. But if you go to the notario and you pay $1,000 for them to file something, they mess it up, you're going to come to me and I'm going to charge you more because it's more expensive to fix something than it is to do something right in the first instance. And then again, there are also nonprofit agencies that do have trained immigration attorneys who can represent you, oftentimes at the same or less than what a notario would charge. So, readynowsandiego.org, I'm going to drill that in your head today. Keep that address handy. You will find trusted attorneys there. Also, fulana de tal on the corner, my cousin's sister's girlfriend's nephew. No, just go to an immigration attorney. Everybody knows somebody who can fill out paperwork. This is the second most complicated area of law. I went to law school. I consider myself to be a pretty smart person, and I'm still learning something new every single day, okay? So what is a notario? Notarios are not lawyers. They are not accredited representatives approved by the government. They use the term notario público, consultor de inmigración, or something along those lines. They cannot give legal advice. It is against the law, okay? So tips and strategies to avoid fraud: get a recommendation. If you've had family members who have gone to an immigration attorney and they've always had, or oftentimes had good success, go to them. But also keep in mind the negative reviews. If you hear people say, don't go to this person, don't go to that person, chances are you'll want to take their advice. Check for credentials. An attorney is usually going to have their law degree or their law license hanging in their office. Now, immigration is federal law, so not every single attorney who practices immigration law is going to be licensed in the state of California. For example, I'm from Maryland. I went to University of Maryland. I took the Maryland bar. I passed the Maryland bar. My law degree is from the University of Maryland. All of my licensing and credentialing and everything is from Maryland. So if you search for me through the California state attorney list, I'm not going to be on there. But if you search for me on Maryland, I will, and it'll show you that I have an active license, that I don't have any disciplinary records. So you're going to want to make sure that you talk to the attorney and find out what state they're licensed in so that you can check disciplinary records. Most states have public disciplinary records. You may not get all of the nitty-gritty details, but it will tell you whether an attorney has been disciplined in the past. It's super important to keep in mind, okay? Identify areas of expertise. Like I said at the beginning, I practice only immigration law now. It's taken it's taken a long time to get experience and to get some sort of expertise in it. But it's still something that evolves and changes every day. It's not just case law and reading the statute. There's policy memos, and it's really complicated. So you're going to want to find somebody who focuses primarily on immigration law. Immigration and family law sometimes can be a good mix, and immigration and criminal law is a really good mix because that often gets mixed together. Stay informed, watch the news to an extent, read newspapers to an extent. I think we all know the media sensationalizes things, but sometimes they do give out good information. But if you see something on the news that you're not sure about, you hear of a new program, talk to an immigration attorney first just to make sure that it really is legit. Get a written contract from the attorney that you hire. Every single attorney in the state of California has to provide you with a written contract. So make sure that you get a copy of it and keep copies of everything. The number one most difficult part of my job is when clients do not have copies of any previous immigration filings. And then I have to request their file from immigration, and that can take a year or more to get it. So if you ever have an attorney who does any paperwork or any processing or anything for you, get a copy of every single filing that they submit and keep it with you at all times. Put it in a safety deposit box, whatever. You will need it in the future, I can promise. You will need it up until you become a U.S. citizen. Once you're a U.S. citizen, you're golden. But up until then, you will need it for cross-referencing. Going back to number 5, staying informed, an attorney also has the duty to keep the client informed. So if months have gone by or weeks have gone by and you haven't heard anything, talk to the attorney. Say, hey, attorney, what's going on with my case? If they keep giving you the roundabout, insist on getting an in-person appointment. If that still isn't happening, get a copy of your file. You as the client are entitled to a copy of your file. Shop around. Sometimes attorneys, they take on more work than they're able to handle and they don't get all the work done. Okay. Any questions?
What can the college do to help students during these uncertain times? You've outlined what they can do, but what can the college do?
I think, on the legal aspect, on the legal side of it, I think just informing yourself of different resources, attending programs like this, saying, you know what, I don't know much about this, but here's what I do know, and helping to point them in the right direction. I think letting your students know that your classroom, your office is a safe place for them, that they can talk to you and be open and honest and not have to worry about judgment or fear with you. And any students have any suggestions? I think from the legal standpoint, that's probably going to be my number one, is just knowing resources, pointing them in the right direction, and knowing that you are a safe place for them.
Yeah, in a number of districts, for example, San Diego Unified School District, they're working on resolutions that they could pass through their board. So that's another way that community colleges could also act to protect.
I'd like to add something. Just as a faculty member, one of the things that I've experienced, not just on issues of immigration, but in issues of life, and struggling with students, is referring them to counselors here on campus. That's been a great resource as well in terms of helping them, at the moment that they may need some advice or some counseling, but also in terms of directing them into to outside resources for the future. Yeah.
Okay, my question is, ready now, SanDiego.org says there's a list of lawyers that
Yes.
we can use. Oftentimes we encounter the issue about the notaries and, notario público and other people going there because, they say, we can give you consultation for, $100, $200, and oftentimes students don't have, a lot of money, obviously. So that's why they go to those people that offer or, say they're going to help them, but, really they're not. But is there any a website for nonprofits, organizations, active nonprofit organizations that could lower the cost or just a free consultation? Because, often that's, I understand lawyers, they're expensive, they can get expensive, but we're not informed that much about nonprofits. I guess the marketing is not out there really. So for us to find nonprofits that actually could help, any cases that is,
Right, exactly. So,
any website?
yeah, ReadyNowSanDiego.org actually has a list of nonprofit organizations.
They do, okay.
Yes, they do. There's organizations all throughout San Diego. There's Catholic Charities. There's URISE that's located in Vista. Legal Aid. There's International Rescue Committee.
So that information is all over here. We have that list of resources with both the immigration attorneys and the legal service providers. We are also planning in general assessment where we will be assessing for other forms of immigration relief, and we will be announcing that information through the ReadyNowSanDiego.org website. So that's the best place to look at right now for those resources.
So if the students wants to, if you have parents, if you have tíos, tías, someone in your house that is not aware of this information, they can pick up that information and give to them. So this is the purpose of this session, I believe. So
Yeah,
I'm going to be
absolutely.
picking those up for my
Another resource available at the Mexican Consulate every Tuesday from 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. We are providing free legal advice on immigration issues. So anybody can stop at any time at that time, and they're going to receive it. And also we are working with AILA, that is the American Immigration Lawyer Association, so we can have several days with an immigration attorney providing legal advice, free legal advice to anybody that goes to the consulate.
Tuesdays 8 to 10.
Yeah, every Tuesday, right now, from every Tuesday from 8 to 10.
Awesome, thank you.
We do have a club named RISE, Rising Immigrants Throughout Education, and we do have a program called we're Borderless Scholars. So if you guys have any questions or want to be part of them, because we are recruiting students for the club and the program, please feel welcome to ask me or Sade, which she's the coordinator.
So my name is Sade Burrell. I'm actually the coordinator of the program here, and we're located down at in the EOPS office. We're called Borderless Scholars, which is a program for AB 540 and undocumented students here at Mesa College. And the program was actually named by the students who are in the program. So in August, we had a get-together where we gave them free backpacks, school supplies, anything that they needed to be successful, book supplies. Right now, we're in the process of trying to make sure that they have free books for next semester. That's some of the things that we're trying to create for them. We're trying to make their education be one less obstacle for them, trying to make it as easy as possible. So we're located down at the EOPS office, and you can come and see me, and I'll be more than willing to help you. Every day we're getting new referrals out from some of our students who are telling other people about the program. So, please tell people about the program. We are here to help. Mesa College actually brought me in April, and so we're a new program, and we're open to suggestions. We're learning and we're growing, and we do need students there to help put their input in and their voices there so that this program could be as great as possible. So Mesa College is trying to support it in the best way possible, but we need your voices and your suggestions in order to make it even better. Yes.
I have a question for Consulado. We're really close to North County, and there's a lot of campos, like farms and the farm workers. How is the Consulado going to provide help for them in that sense with the new elections coming up?
So, the Consulado is not all, we are not only operating in the central offices in downtown. We have what is called Consulado Móviles or Consulado sobre Ruedas. That is that we transport all the equipment necessary to any remote location in San Diego County, so we can issue passports or consular IDs, and also we take our legal consultants and attorneys, so they can provide also advice at that moment with all the farm workers at the north of county. As well, we are having these type of sessions every single day, and also I go directly with the farms or anywhere they're working, and during their lunchtime I give this type of information so they can reach the consulate at any time, or they can call the phone numbers on the poster in front of you, and they can reach us 24/7.
Any other questions?
Well, if you ever get your license and you're undocumented, does that put you at risk for getting deported?
Do you mean like the AB 60 driver's license or a license gotten through DACA?
Both.
Okay, so technically, ICE does not have, ICE and the DMV do not coordinate, technically. I have heard of instances, whether it's a coincidence or not, I don't know, where people who are considered priorities for deportation, so meaning the person has had a previous DUI, they've had felony convictions, or anything along those lines, where ICE has picked them up. It actually happened to a friend of mine, and she unfortunately was deported and is now in Mexico. I wish she would have talked to me before she got her license. But if your record is clean, then you should be fine. If you were able to get a driver's license through DACA, ICE already knows you're here, so there really is no separate risk. But if you got an AB 60 driver's license, I seriously doubt that the DMV is just going to hand over, these, however, 500,000 people who got the license over to ICE. So I think it should be fine, unless you have some sort of criminal history that would make you a target. Now, if you do have criminal history, or if your family member, your relative has criminal history, have them talk to an immigration attorney, because there's very specific legal analysis that needs to be done for every single crime. It's a possibility that it may even be able to be reopened. I mean, there's different options. So don't think, oh, I have a criminal conviction, I'm not going to talk to anybody because, you know, my case is over. No, that's not necessarily true. Talk to somebody and see what can be done about it, if anything can be done.
Maria, can I ask a little bit more in terms of that question? I know there's a little bit of confusion in terms of this idea that that only undocumented immigrants with a criminal record are being deported. What is the difference between a criminal record and, let's say, being convicted of an immigration offense? Is an immigration offense a deportable offense, or is a criminal record something different?
So it's going to depend on exactly which kind of immigration offense we're talking about. If we're talking about a federal immigration offense for re-entry after removal, it's not so much the criminal offense that's an issue for you, it's the re-entry of removal. It's the immigration violation that would make you a target for them to try to track you down and find you. Now, there are certain states, say for example Arizona, that have actually criminalized being in the state undocumented. For immigration purposes, right now, that does not count. It's not considered a criminal conviction because it's a conviction because of your undocumented status, not because you committed a real crime, but simply because of your presence in the state. And that, for immigration purposes, right now, does not count. But like I said, certain federal crimes, re-entry after removal, if you're ever convicted of that, if you're ever convicted of entering without documentation, but this actually is a federal offense, then that's something that will affect you, but not so much because of the criminal conviction, more so because of the actual immigration violation. Does that make sense? Okay.
Let us please give all of these wonderful individuals a round of applause.